A sharp crack echoed through the dense jungle as the human ship plummeted through the alien atmosphere, finally skidding to a halt in a clearing. Smoke billowed from the mangled vessel, its pilot groaning as he stumbled out, clutching a half-eaten protein bar. "Great! Another Tuesday in hell," he muttered, brushing ash from his jumpsuit. He barely had time to assess the damage before a chorus of high-pitched yells erupted from the trees. From the shadows emerged towering figures, easily twice his height, clad in flowing fabrics that shimmered under the alien sun. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and disbelief, their pointed ears twitching as they encircled him. One stepped forward, her features regal, a crown of woven vines perched atop her head. She regarded him with narrowed eyes, her lips curling into what could only be described as a predatory grin. Before he could stammer out an excuse, two of the women hoisted him into the air as if he weighed nothing. "Hey! Personal space!" he yelped, kicking his legs uselessly. They carried him through winding pathways, their laughter echoing like musical bells. He was deposited in a massive clearing where a strange sight awaited him, enormous cats lounging atop ornate cushions, their eyes half-lidded in feline disdain. A crowd of the giant women surrounded the clearing, all bowing reverently toward the animals. The human rubbed his eyes. "Am I hallucinating, or is this some kind of alien cat-worshipping cult?" The regal woman stepped forward again, addressing the crowd in a language that sounded like a mix of bird calls and purrs. She gestured dramatically toward the human, her speech reaching a crescendo. The crowd erupted in cheers, clapping their hands in unison. The man pointed at himself, confused. Me? Did I win something?" The queen approached him, her expression solemn. In halting English, she declared, "You are great feeder." "Great what now?" He squinted, hoping for clarification. "Great feeder," she repeated, gesturing to the cats lounging nearby. "You feed P***size." His jaw dropped. "I think there's been a massive misunderstanding here, lady." The queen ignored his protests, grabbing his hand and dragging him toward a pedestal in the center of the clearing. A massive golden bowl rested atop it, filled with unidentifiable glowing orbs. She pointed to the bowl, then to the cats, and then to him, miming the act of eating. "You eat, or die." "Wow, okay, aggressive," he muttered. His mind raced. Was this some kind of initiation? A test? Whatever it was, the implication of failure wasn't something he wanted to experience. The cats, meanwhile, seemed to be watching with mild amusement, their tails flicking lazily. He cautiously picked up one of the glowing orbs, sniffing it. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and despair. "All right, here goes nothing," he muttered, popping it into his mouth. The taste was indescribable, like biting into pure regret. He gagged, struggling to swallow. The crowd erupted into cheers again, clapping enthusiastically as the queen nodded approvingly. One of the cats let out a sharp meow, clearly unimpressed. The queen frowned, pointing at the human. "Not enough. More. More? Lady, I don't think my digestive system was built for this." The queen folded her arms, her expression firm. "Eat P***size, or die," he groaned, shoving another orb into his mouth, the crowd's cheers growing louder with each agonizing bite. The next morning, the human was dragged into the heart of the tribe's village, feeling more like a prisoner than a guest. The queens had dressed him in a robe so large it looked like he was wearing a circus tent, and he had spent the night tossing and turning, too uncomfortable to sleep. The cats had taken up residence on the rooftop of his makeshift hut, staring down at him like royal judges at an execution. "All right," he muttered under his breath, adjusting the robe. "Let's get this over with. How hard can it be to appease a bunch of giant women and their overly judgmental cats?" A woman with strikingly long silver hair, who seemed to be one of the leaders of the tribe, led him into a massive ceremonial hall. The air smelled heavily of incense, and strange chanting filled the air as the tribe gathered around. In the center of the hall stood a huge cauldron bubbling with an ominous green liquid. His stomach twisted at the sight. "All right, kid," the silver-haired woman said, looking him over with a smirk. We'll teach you the ancient rituals. It's all about balance, respect, and feeding the cats. He swallowed nervously. Feeding the cats again. Got it. She motioned for him to step forward. You must learn our ways, or you will fail. The great cats demand respect, and if you fail to deliver, our world will be in peril. He raised an eyebrow. The world? You're telling me these cats are that important? She nodded solemnly. Yes. The great cats are divine. We feed them, worship them, and most importantly, we satisfy them. He blinked, thinking he must have misheard. Satisfy? As in? The woman smiled, her eyes glinting with mischief. You'll find out soon enough. First, you must master the sacred meal. The rest of the tribe gathered around as a parade of bizarre ingredients was laid out before him. The items looked alien and unrecognizable, fruits that glowed like neon signs, squirming gelatinous blobs, and what appeared to be tiny, sentient fish that eyed him with disdain. I'm not sure what's happening here, he said, eyeing the assortment. I've never seen anything like this before in my life. Is there, like, a manual or something? One of the women laughed. No manual. You must trust the process. The cats are picky, but they'll respect you if you perform the ritual correctly. Just follow the steps, and remember, no mistakes. His confidence was wavering. Right. No mistakes. What could go wrong? She handed him a large knife and gestured to a pile of wriggling alien insects. You start with these. Cut them in half. Gently. Gently? You want me to cut them gently? He asked, his mind reeling. What happens if I do it too harshly? The woman just smiled. Then they will scream. The great cats do not like screams. The human gulped, trying to steady his trembling hands. He picked up one of the insects and began to slice through it with shaky precision. As soon as the blade made contact, the insect let out a high-pitched, eerie screech that sent a shiver down his spine. The tribe gasped in horror. You have failed, the woman said. The great cats cannot hear screams. The human threw his hands up in exasperation. What do you want from me? I don't know your stupid rituals. The silver-haired woman took a deep breath. Start again. But this time, you must speak to the cats as you cook. They will listen to you if you show proper respect. He stared at her in disbelief. You want me to talk to the cats? What, like, hey, buddy, here's your lunch? Yes, she replied seriously. Exactly like that. He groaned. You've got to be kidding me. But he knew he didn't have much of a choice. He approached the cauldron, stirring the concoction of ingredients with a wooden spoon. Okay, kiddies. Time for dinner. The cats, lounging in the background, perked up their ears at the sound of his voice, eyeing him with curiosity. A few of the larger ones even stretched lazily, their tails swishing back and forth. Great cats, the woman intoned from behind him. You must speak with authority. They are the divine beings of our world. Yeah, divine. But, if I don't get this right, do I at least get a second chance? He turned toward her, desperation in his eyes. No, she said, crossing her arms. You only get one chance. Fail, and you are no longer the great feeder. Right. Fantastic, he muttered. The human gave a nervous laugh, adjusting the oversized robe that kept slipping off his shoulders. All right, fine. Here goes. He cleared his throat and turned back toward the cats. Okay, fine, divine cats. Enjoy your meal, I guess. There was an uncomfortable silence. The cats blinked slowly, their giant eyes gleaming in the dim light. Then, to his surprise, one of them stood up and slowly padded toward the cauldron. The human blinked in disbelief. Wait. You're actually gonna? With a graceful swipe, the cat began to eat the strange, bubbling concoction, purring loudly. Another followed suit, then another. The tribe began to cheer, clapping their hands in approval. The human watched in stunned silence. He had no idea what was happening, but the cats seemed pleased. And for the first time, he felt like he might not die here. At least, not today. See? the silver-haired woman said, her voice filled with triumph. You are the great feeder. Yeah, sure. Whatever. I guess I'm the great feeder now, he replied, trying to hold back a sigh. But you know what? I'd really appreciate it if you could just tell me what happens next. I still don't get it. The woman smirked. Patience, human. The great feeder's journey is long, but you will learn. In time, you will understand the true purpose of your feeding. He groaned inwardly, dreading what was to come next. The following day, the human found himself once again at the center of the tribe's activities, his role as the great feeder seemingly cemented. The cats, having devoured the sacred meal from the cauldron, had now surrounded him, their huge, judgmental eyes following his every move. He stood there awkwardly, still unsure of his place in this bizarre society. The silver-haired woman approached him once more, her expression unreadable. It is time for your next task, great feeder. Great feeder, right? He muttered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. What could possibly top feeding sacred glowing bugs and weird soup to space cats? She ignored his tone, motioning for him to follow her. The next step in your journey is to prove yourself worthy of becoming our divine ally. You must perform the dance of the sacred feeding. His stomach churned. Dance? Wait, what? The woman nodded. Yes. The dance. The cats will watch. They will judge. If they approve, you will be granted their blessing. The human blinked in disbelief. You're telling me I need to dance for a bunch of cats to get their blessing? What is this, a reality show? But the woman was serious. You must perform the sacred movements. If the cats are pleased, they will give you their blessing. If they are displeased, you will face the consequences. Consequences? Like what? They'll swipe at me with their claws. Rip my head off. Or worse, she added cryptically. He sighed, rubbing his temples. All right, fine. I'll dance. But I'm telling you right now, I don't have the slightest clue what I'm doing. The tribe gathered, forming a circle around him. The silver-haired woman handed him a strange, colorful garment, saying, Put this on. It is sacred. The garment was a mix of flowing fabric and intricate beadwork, adorned with symbols that meant absolutely nothing to him. He stared at it for a moment before slipping it over his head, the material falling loosely around him. Great! I look like a walking circus tent. The crowd grew silent. The woman raised her hands, signaling the beginning of the ritual. The music began, a strange melody that seemed to vibrate through the air. The human took a deep breath. Here goes nothing, he muttered. He began to move, awkwardly at first, mimicking the swaying gestures the women had demonstrated. His arms flailed as he tried to replicate their graceful movements, but all he managed was a series of jerky, uncoordinated stumbles. The cats, meanwhile, sat quietly, their eyes locked onto him. Is this right? He asked, unsure of his next move. He glanced over at the woman, but she remained stone-faced, her arms crossed as she observed. The cats remained unfazed. A few of them yawned, as though they were completely uninterested in his attempts. His face flushed with embarrassment. A cat suddenly let out a low growl, and the human froze. Oh! I think I messed up. The silver-haired woman stepped forward. You are not dancing with respect, great feeder. The cats are offended. The human groaned. I'm trying here, okay? This is ridiculous. The woman smiled, unfazed by his frustration. You must learn their rhythm. You must become one with the cats. Only then will they accept you. Become one with the cats? Are you serious? He deadpanned, though he could already tell he wasn't going to get any sympathy. He continued to stumble through the bizarre dance, feeling more like a man being tortured than a great feeder. His legs were starting to ache, his body moving in ways it was never meant to, and yet, somehow, the cats still looked completely unimpressed. One of them, the largest of the group, yawned so loudly it almost sounded like a roar. This is hopeless, he muttered, sitting down on the ground in frustration. No! The woman barked. You must keep going! With a resigned sigh, he stood up and tried again, doing his best to mimic the strange, flowing dance moves he had seen the women perform earlier. His arms waved in a ridiculous, flapping motion, and his legs shuffled in unison, but it still felt like he was stumbling through an alien fever dream. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the cats, a sleek black one with glowing eyes, suddenly padded forward and, with an almost playful flick of its tail, knocked him off balance. He fell to the ground, landing in a heap. The entire crowd erupted in laughter. The human lay there, flat on his back, staring up at the sky, completely defeated. Great! Now I'm a joke to these giant cat-worshipping women and their divine animals. But to his surprise, the silver-haired woman stepped forward, extending a hand to help him up. It is not about being perfect, great feeder. It is about effort. The cats see your heart. Well, my heart feels like it's about to explode from embarrassment, he muttered, but he took her hand and stood up. Try again. This time, dance with passion, she instructed, her voice surprisingly gentle. He nodded, wiping dirt from his hands. Fine. Passion. Whatever that means. He took another deep breath and attempted to re-enter the dance, this time focusing less on his clumsy movements and more on just letting go. As he twirled around, his mind started to zone out, and for a brief moment, he felt like he was actually in sync with the bizarre rhythm of the music. The cats watched, their heads tilted slightly as if considering his effort. The silver-haired woman's eyes softened. You are learning, great feeder. He didn't have time to process her words, as another cat stepped forward. This time, it rubbed its face against his leg, purring softly. Did I just pass the test? He asked, barely believing what was happening. Not yet, she replied, smirking. But this is a good sign. He let out a deep breath, his body aching but his spirits lifted. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this strange world after all. The following morning, the human found himself in front of a massive feast laid out before him. The smells were tantalizing, with sizzling meats, strange fruits, and glowing pastries. He couldn't help but feel both hungry and apprehensive. After all, this was the moment, the culmination of his bizarre journey thus far. The silver-haired woman, who had become his reluctant guide, stood beside him, arms crossed, her piercing gaze never leaving him. You must feed the royal cats once again, great feeder, she said, her voice carrying a tone of finality. This is your test. If you succeed, they will honor you as a true ally. Great, no pressure, he muttered, eyeing the enormous platter of food. So, I'm supposed to feed them again. Same as last time, right? She shook her head. No. This time, you must prepare something worthy of their divine taste. You must cook with your soul. Show them that you are more than just a feeder. He blinked, still trying to grasp the concept. Cook with my soul? What does that even mean? Is this some metaphorical thing, like, I need to really feel the food? Precisely. She smiled as though pleased with his confusion. Feel the ingredients. Understand the essence of each flavor. Only then will you gain their respect. He looked at the spread before him, his stomach growling, but his mind racing with confusion. What was he supposed to do? He had no idea how to cook like this. Sure, he knew how to throw a frozen pizza in the oven or microwave some leftovers, but this? This was different. The cats, as usual, were lounging nearby, observing everything with their enigmatic, glowing eyes. The humans swallowed hard, realizing that the stakes were even higher now. These cats didn't just want food, they wanted an experience. They were discerning connoisseurs, and he was supposed to impress them. The woman handed him an odd cooking utensil, which looked like a combination between a spatula and a spoon, with strange carvings on the handle. You must use this, she said solemnly. Great, a mystical spatula, he muttered, turning the utensil over in his hand. Well, all right then. Let's see what we can do. He took a deep breath and grabbed the closest ingredients, juicy, purple fruits that smelled strangely sweet and spicy, some chunks of meat that seemed to shimmer under the light, and a bizarre-looking green herb that glowed faintly. As he began to chop and mix, He tried to follow the woman's advice, focusing not on technique but on the soul of the food. What did that even mean? Was he supposed to channel his inner chef? Despite his doubts, he forged ahead, stirring the concoction with the mystical spatula as the woman watched silently. The cats, meanwhile, didn't seem to be showing much interest, lazily flicking their tails and licking their paws. He stirred faster, wondering if there was some magic to this that he just wasn't getting. A bead of sweat formed on his forehead as he considered the absurdity of it all. Cooking for a bunch of royal cats. Really? The woman's voice broke his thoughts. Remember. Focus. The food must sing to them. They are not ordinary cats. They are royal, divine creatures. And they deserve the finest offerings. Fine, he grumbled, his hands shaking as he plated the dish, trying his best to make it look presentable. The food didn't even look that bad, it actually looked kind of fancy. He hoped that was a good sign. When he placed the plate before the largest of the cats, the one with golden fur, the animal didn't immediately pounce on it like he expected. Instead, it sniffed the air, its eyes narrowing in silent judgment. Well, it's a start, the human said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The silver-haired woman stepped closer, her eyes scanning the scene. Now you must wait. The cats will decide your fate. And so, they waited. The human watched as the large golden cat took its time, carefully sniffing the food, then gingerly taking a small bite. His heart pounded in his chest as he held his breath. Seconds felt like hours, but finally, the golden cat let out a deep, resonating purr, the sound filling the air. It was a low, satisfied rumble that made the human's stomach flutter. The other cats, sensing the approval, began to stir, approaching the food one by one, each taking a delicate bite. The human felt a wave of relief wash over him, but the silver-haired woman remained silent, her expression unreadable. It seems they like it, he said, letting out a nervous laugh. She nodded slowly. They approve. But the question remains, do you approve of yourself? He frowned. What do you mean by that? The cats are merely a reflection of you, great feeder. They have judged your soul through the food you have prepared. Your worth as an ally is not only determined by your actions but by your confidence, your sense of purpose. The human thought about this for a moment, looking at the serene faces of the royal cats as they savored the meal. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand this strange place. Maybe the food wasn't just about ingredients and flavors. It was about connection, about offering something that came from within. I guess I'm doing all right then, he said, more to himself than to her. You have passed the test, she said with a nod. The cats are satisfied. And now, so are we. The human let out a long breath, his shoulders slumping in relief. Thank God, he muttered, glancing at the cats who were now peacefully purring around him. I think I could get used to this. But as the silver-haired woman turned away, she offered one final cryptic comment. You may have passed their test, but remember, being a true ally means more than feeding them. You still have much to learn, great feeder. The human just shrugged, half smiling. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. And with that, for the first time in his bizarre journey, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to fit in.